It's about looking at artists' work and working with them to produce a project that's interesting for the public and engaging for them, but also a way for us to find out about how these works can inform our understanding and enrich our understanding of the port and its relationship to the city.
Every project is different. There's lots of things you can't anticipate about it, and I suppose what drives me is the thing of working with people, really.
It started out as a much smaller project, the possibility of a curated programme of works with Cliona Harmey. Cliona had worked with the port before. She had an interest in that area, and she has a great sort of knowledge and interest in the area of artist moving image and experimental cinema. With the support of Port Perspectives, it gave it the capacity to be so much more than that, to be this whole other project that was initially conceived for a cinema space and for a single screening event, into a place that could spill outside of the cinema into public spaces.
We devised a project that was more based around the idea of chance encounters with moving image. What we were thinking about was a way of moving film or moving image works from the furthest point at the lighthouse down into the city.
Well, originally the idea was to open up the Poolbeg Lighthouse on the Great South Wall, but that became not possible to do. But that meant that we kind of had to reconfigure the project a little bit in our minds, but that ended up allowing us to eventually collaborate with Fiona MacDonald to build this structure which she called the Image Projection Support Structure.
Going into this support structure had a very particular effect in that it felt almost submersive. It kind of evoked something like being inside a diving bell, in that you're in this very enclosed space, usually surrounded by, there was rarely less than 6 people in there. And you'd see people come back out of that structure and just being like blinking and readjusting themselves to the real world in a way that was really interesting.
There were 2 other elements that were essential to that day as well. We installed a programme of works by P.V. Garrett in this Half Moon swimming club just halfway up the south wall, which people could kind of go into at any stage and sit down.
I made 2 works which were live feeds from inside the lighthouse. So one was from the inside of the lens, the Fresnel lens, and we did a live feed that day so that people could see inside the lighthouse. And also we set up a camera at one of the windows, so from the other end of the pier you could see a view from the window.
All of these were about sort of points of contact with people where they could sort of experience the project in different ways.
Dan Shipside has a project called T5 Cinema, and it's a mobile camper van that he adapts into mobile cinema. So he showed a series of artist films and also a new commissioned work that he made.
Why we were drawn to Dan was we knew that the work he would generate would be really in conversation with the environments of Dublin Port.
There was a few elements to it. So we were opposite the new central bank, and Dan Shipside set up his van. And then we also had a live feed from the lighthouse. And then further upriver, Vanessa Dawes had 4 windows illuminated with images that she had recorded with a GoPro camera swimming over the last 2 or 3 years in the Liffey.
Her film work is, I think, really exciting for Dubliners. When you watch her footage, you feel like you're right in the water with her, and really, most impactfully as well, it means that you're seeing all of these sort of landmarks of Dublin, but from an altogether new perspective. Thinking of different scales of sort of cinema experience that form part of the project overall, it was really nice to see, like, you know, the project start off where people would encounter Cliona's work as they, you know, walked down the south wall, and then You know, a week later, the project also included this Cinema One IFI screening of Moira's film, which is obviously at the other end of the sort of the scale. So it was nice to sort of consider these different ways of screening these works.
The project begins at Great South Wall and ends in the RSAI, a building that's full of history, and it's a way for us to reflect publicly on the project. So instead of, you know, the project is closed, you sit and maybe you reflect on the project in a way that's very informal. We kind of like the idea of formalizing that and kind of putting ourselves in a position where we have to do that in a public space.
And we were collaborating with all of the individuals, but some of them didn't kind of come in contact with each other until that final event. So this was an opportunity for everyone who had contributed in such a significant way to the project to sit down together and also, you know, really talk openly and frankly about, you know, what worked and what didn't.
I think what this project has done is introduce us also to different ways of working and different artists, different perspectives that we didn't come across before we started this project. I think that's what makes the future of these relationships rich and interesting.
When I look back on it, I think, A, that we were really lucky. I still can't really quite believe that, you know, so much of it relied on good weather and we were lucky every time. And also, to some extent, I think about sort of the scale of it, and I can't believe we pulled it off. Also, just sort of thinking about the ideas that came up and letting those sort of sit in your mind a bit and mulling over them. And that's really important because then it's from there that you're able to think about like what you can do next.